It's a strange thing to say out loud. I wear a panic button at 81. At first, even I thought it sounded like admitting defeat, like telling the world that I'm fragile and can't manage life on my own anymore. But as the years pass, I've come to realize something gentler, something almost liberating. Aging isn't about losing strength, it's about shifting the way we understand strength. You see, strength in our 30s or 40s looked like running up the stairs without thinking, carrying heavy bags from the market, or working late into the night. But strength in our 80s takes a softer form. It looks like honesty with yourself, like courage to accept help, like patience when your body moves slower than your heart wants it to. Isn't that a strange yet beautiful transformation? What feels like weakness at first, the decision to wear a button that calls for help, is in truth an act of deep self-respect. It's saying, my life is worth protecting, even in its most ordinary moments. And I wonder, have you allowed yourself to see your safety as a form of love toward yourself? There is something humbling about recognizing that no matter how wise we become, our bodies still need care. Sometimes we resist it because we feel society whispers that independence means doing everything alone. But isn't it more human to admit that no one at any age truly lives without leaning on others? Think of the way a child takes their parent's hand to cross the street, or how a friend calls to check in after you've been unwell. Accepting support is not a sign of fading, but of belonging. The truth is, fear of falling or of being left without help in a sudden moment is real, and pretending it isn't only makes the nights feel longer. I've known people who lived with that quiet fear, but once they allowed themselves this small piece of reassurance, they discovered peace of mind they hadn't felt in years. Maybe you felt it too, that whisper in the back of your mind when you walk through the house at night or when you bend down to tie your shoes. We don't have to silence those whispers, we can answer them with compassion. That, to me, is what wearing a panic button really means. It's not about surrendering independence, but about creating a bridge between courage and safety. It allows you to keep living the life you love with fewer shadows of worry following you from room to room. And as you sit with these thoughts, I'd love to know something simple. Where are you reading this from? Tell me in the comments. I imagine your space, and it helps me feel a little closer to you. And as you sit with these thoughts, I'd love to know something simple. Where are you reading this from? Tell me in the comments. I imagine your space, and it helps me feel a little closer to you. Eleanor was 84 when she told me her story. She had lived alone since her husband passed, and she prided herself on managing everything without assistance. The house was small, the routines familiar, and she always said, I don't want to feel old by depending on gadgets. For a long time, she refused to wear the panic button her children bought for her. I don't need it, she would insist. But then came the day when she slipped in the kitchen, a simple fall on spilled water. She lay on the floor for almost an hour before she could crawl to the phone. That moment shifted everything. She told me later, it wasn't the fall that frightened me the most, it was the silence, the thought that no one knew. After that, she put the button on, and for the first time in years, she felt free to move around her home without carrying that quiet fear. What strikes me most about Eleanor's story isn't the accident, it's the resistance before it happened. We often resist help, not because we don't need it, but because we want to hold on to our sense of identity. And yet, isn't true identity more about how we live than how we appear? Eleanor discovered that by allowing herself a little support, she actually kept more of her independence, not less. You may have places in your own life where you feel the same kind of hesitation. Maybe you've been avoiding using a cane because you think it makes you look frail, or you refuse to ask your neighbor for a hand with groceries. But here's the paradox. By softening into these small supports, you often gain more freedom than you lose. The button, the cane, the helping hand, they are not chains. They are bridges, allowing you to keep living with confidence. So perhaps you could try something gentle. Choose one area where you have been saying, "No, I don't need help," and ask yourself what it might feel like to try the opposite. It doesn't mean you're surrendering, it means you're making a wise investment in your own peace of mind. Strength at this stage of life isn't about proving you can stand alone against everything, it's about choosing what makes you feel safe enough to keep moving forward with dignity. Sometimes that one choice, like Eleanor's, can open the door to a calmer, fuller life. If these thoughts resonate with you, I invite you to subscribe so you won't miss the gentle reminders and stories that may speak to your own journey. When we think about falling, we often imagine it as just a clumsy accident, something small that happens in an instant. But the truth is, the body you live in today doesn't respond the way it did decades ago. The simple act of losing balance has a very different meaning now. As we age, our reflexes become slower, so the body doesn't react as quickly to catch itself. The muscles that once fired like springs are gentler now, sometimes not strong enough to hold us upright in a sudden slip. And then there are the bones, once dense and sturdy, now more fragile, more vulnerable to a break. This isn't your fault, it's the natural rhythm of life, the way time reshapes us quietly year after year. Even the inner ear, the part of your body that helps you keep balance, can change with age, making it easier to feel unsteady when you turn your head or rise too quickly. Have you noticed moments when you stand up from a chair and the room feels like it moves before you do? That little dizziness is your body reminding you it needs more patience, more care. Some people feel embarrassed when they experience this, but I wonder, why should care be shameful? Isn't it wiser to listen to these messages and adjust gently, instead of pushing through as if nothing has changed? I once spoke to a man in his late 70s who said, "I used to spring out of bed. Now I sit for a moment before I stand." That simple pause kept him from fainting spells that had frightened him before. It's such a small adjustment, yet it gave him steadiness. The body is always speaking, even in whispers, if we are willing to hear it. You might ask yourself, do I give myself enough time to move at the pace my body prefers now? Do I notice the way my energy shifts throughout the day, instead of expecting myself to keep the same rhythm from morning until night? These are not questions of weakness, but of wisdom. By noticing and respecting these signals, you give yourself the chance to prevent harm instead of reacting to it afterward. And yes, that little panic button on your chest or wrist, it isn't just a piece of plastic. It's part of your body's new language of safety, an extension of awareness. It says, "I'm prepared, I've thought ahead, and I value my life enough to keep it protected." Doesn't that sound more like courage than fragility? The more we understand what our bodies are going through, the kinder we can be to ourselves. And kindness, especially toward ourselves, may be the strongest medicine of all. Safety doesn't always come from grand changes. Often, it's found in the little rituals we build into our daily lives. Think of them as gentle habits, like brushing your teeth or watering a plant. Except these ones quietly protect you each time you follow them. One of the simplest steps is to look at the floors you walk across every day. A loose rug, a stray cord, even yesterday's newspaper can become a stumbling block. Taking a moment each evening to clear the path in your living room or hallway isn't just cleaning. It's a way of saying to yourself, "I deserve a safe space to move in." And when the sun goes down, a dark hallway can feel longer and less familiar. A small nightlight, placed softly along the way, can make that midnight trip to the bathroom less of a risk and more of a gentle walk. Lighting is like a friend holding your hand in the dark, steadying you when your eyes need a little help. Another ritual worth embracing is keeping something within reach. A phone on a low table, a panic button at your wrist, or even a bell by your chair. All these are small lifelines that bring comfort simply by being near. You may never need them, but isn't there a kind of relief in knowing they are there? A woman once told me that just seeing her button on the nightstand helped her sleep deeper. She felt less alone, even when the house was quiet. Connection, too, is a ritual. A quick daily check-in with a neighbor, a call from a friend, or a message from a grandchild can be woven into the fabric of your day. It's not about being dependent, but about being part of a net that catches you when life feels wobbly. Have you considered setting up a simple rhythm, like a call at the same time each morning or evening? These patterns don't only protect your body, they soothe your heart. Perhaps you're wondering if these steps will make you feel boxed in, as though life is ruled by rules. But I'd like you to see them differently. They are not restrictions, but quiet companions. Just as a favorite chair supports you without asking for recognition, these little rituals carry you forward, often unnoticed but deeply protective. Every act of safety is, at its core, an act of love. Love for your body, for your peace of mind, for the days you still want to live fully. And maybe tonight, as you walk through your home, you could ask yourself, what small ritual can I add that will make tomorrow just a little safer, a little lighter, a little kinder to me? There is another kind of button we carry, one that isn't made of plastic or metal, but is hidden deep within us. It is the button we press when loneliness becomes too heavy, when silence stretches on longer than it should, when we long to hear a voice remind us that we are not forgotten. Safety is not only about preventing falls or calling for help in an emergency. It is also about the warmth of connection, the feeling that someone knows you, remembers you, and holds you in their thoughts. You might have felt that emptiness before, sitting in a quiet house, noticing the way the clock ticks louder when no one else is around. It is in those moments that the emotional button becomes just as important as the physical one. One woman told me she began writing short notes to her grandchildren once a week, not long letters, just a paragraph about what she saw from her window that morning. Sometimes she received replies, sometimes she didn't, but she said, "Every note I send is a reminder to myself that my voice is still out there, that I still reach into the world." Another man, after losing his wife, began calling a friend every evening around dinner. At first, he worried it would feel like a burden, but it became a ritual for both of them, a gentle anchor in their day. These little acts are not about filling time. They are about creating threads that tie you to others. And I wonder, who is it that you turn to when your heart feels heavy? Do you allow yourself to tell someone, "I'd like some company today"? Or do you keep it tucked inside because you don't want to trouble anyone? Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not endure silence, but reach out into it. Even something as simple as joining a small community group, calling a neighbor, or writing down your feelings in a letter you may or may not send can ease the weight. Safety grows in many forms. A well-lit hallway, a phone nearby, but also a friend who expects your voice, a grandchild who smiles when they see your message, a neighbor who notices your light in the evening. These are the things that protect the spirit as surely as the panic button protects the body. Wearing one may save your life, but pressing the other, the invisible, emotional one, saves your sense of belonging. And in the end, isn't belonging what we all long for most? If these words touched you, I invite you to subscribe so you won't miss future reflections written with care for you. And tell me, do you already have your own version of a panic button in life? Something that makes you feel safe when the world grows quiet? Share it in the comments. I would love to hear.